We take you back now to the National Results Operations Centre in Pretoria, where we find my colleagues, co-anchors Ayanda, Nyathi and Michelle Craig. Alongside them, our senior politics reporter, Ayanda.
Well, we'll get to Ayanda in just a moment. A very good morning to you once again, Mbositole, and to our viewers as well. Yep, you're absolutely right. We're still here at the Results Operations Centre, and my voice is still hoarse.
I'm wondering how long we have with you, actually, before I'm going to need to start signing what you feel. Luckily, you and I can read each other from our looks. So I think
can we? Can we? So I actually want to take our viewers to the results board that is there on the main floor. I'm hoping to get a shot from our ENG camera of that middle board there. So when you and I arrived here this morning, there we go, there it is. It was updated, I believe it was at 4:30, am I right?
Yeah.
And the numbers, I think, have almost they've gone up by about 40% just in terms of the numbers we saw about an hour ago. These numbers you're seeing on your screen now, they are from 5:40 this morning. So they've been updated just moments ago, 4 minutes ago, in fact. You'll remember that how the vote counting works is that the ballot papers will actually be counted at voting stations.
Correct.
And those numbers will then be fed into the IEC system. You can't make anything of the numbers you're seeing on the screen here now. Don't read anything into it, but these are the numbers that we have so far. About 718,000 votes to the ANC, the Democratic Alliance, 468,000, almost 69,000.
Absolutely, and all of that collated so far equals about 11% of the total vote that's been counted so far. So really, just to reiterate, it's way too early to tell how this vote will eventually turn out, despite what you're seeing at the moment, which is an ANC and a Democratic Alliance making some kind of inroads. There hasn't necessarily been any kind of proclamation about where any municipality will be headed. Great interest, of course, to see how the big metros are going to fare. In the lead up to this moment, we had heard from many analysts, telling us that they are likely only to be hung metros in the country, except for the city of Cape Town. The question, of course, is what will the dynamic look like within that context? And more importantly, have we figured out how to run coalition government in a country like ours? There's been a lot of citing of the situation in Tshwane as it stands. That is being cited as an example of how coalition governments can go so awfully wrong. And there are real concerns around whether or not that kind of dysfunctionality could be repeated in some instances in other hung municipalities.
So yeah, you talk about coalition governments. News 24 actually did it's called the Out of Order Index. Just insofar as coalition governments are concerned, do they work for the people who live in those areas that are governed by coalitions? So a coalition, according to this report, does not equal good governance. The index has shown 2 out of the 3 best run metros in the country are not governed by coalition governments. There's a lot of information here. I'd actually suggest that you just go onto the News 24 website and have a look at that index. It's very interesting indeed. You talk about the 3 big metros, and you're talking about Tshwane, Johannesburg, and Ekurhuleni. That's in Gauteng.
Right.
We know that, what is it? Tshwane.
There you go.
Tshwane, thank you. It's very, very early in the morning. Governed by a DA-led coalition.
Right.
The ANC and the DA have both been very strong in the fact that they want to govern outright. Neither of them are keen on coalition governments. The DA has said it will not go back to its decisions from 2016, where it went into a coalition with the EFF, among other parties. They say their values don't line up. The African National Congress, for the first time in the run-up to an election, sort of hinted at the fact that it was open to talking about coalition governments. The president on the campaign trail said, no, actually, we're not talking coalitions. We want to govern outright. It's all going to hang in the balance in terms of how these results look. Will they have a choice?
Exactly.
You're going to have to work with one party or another. The other issue is that, you know, when it is campaign season and electioneering season, parties are going to say what their electorate and what their base wants to hear. So, yeah, I might say that I'm not going to go into a coalition government with you. I'm just not prepared to do so. Post-elections, that might change.
Absolutely, and we've seen it happen before, where parties have completely switched up, for lack of a better term, when it comes to the doing of the actual work. But we can't speak about coalitions, Michelle, without mentioning the kingmakers, right?
Yep.
The smaller parties who, in many instances, have that kind of influence when you consider the dynamic we're currently working with. Again, still very early results, only 11% of the national count currently in. However, in Johannesburg, Action SA already making some serious inroads. There'd always been a prediction that they would take away not only from the ANC but certainly from the DA also when it comes to how things will actually fare in the city of Johannesburg. Still a lot of questions about whether or not they'll get enough of a vote for Action SA to have an influence really completely in how governance actually takes place in the city of Johannesburg. But you definitely want to watch out for those smaller parties, the Patriotic Alliance also in some regions said to be quite influential. They will make the difference. They too in some instances have drawn a line in the sand when it comes to which parties they're willing to work with. The big question, of course, as we continue making sense of the results is, does any single organization have the luxury of choice when it comes to who they actually want to govern with, especially if your vote is anything to go by. But speaking about that, we had spent an incredible amount of time, at least in the early stages of this broadcast, speaking about the low voter turnout.
Oh, yeah.
That is important because in some instances, depending how many people actually rock up to vote, that has a direct impact on which party benefits in certain districts.
I want to talk a bit more about Action SA because there's some buzz on social media with people saying those rooting for Action SA, they're going to be disappointed when the election results come out. Other polling suggesting that in Johannesburg, Action SA could even go as far as 31%. How possible is that? And then there's the story, as you say, Ayanda, around independent candidates, possibly kingmakers. Insofar as independent candidates are concerned, almost double the amount of independent candidates we saw in the 2016 local government elections. It was around 870-odd independents that stood for election in those polls. This time around, about 1,700, more than that, in fact, independent candidates standing for these local government elections. So the story of voter turnout, again, is going to be a big one, no doubt. When we look at the 2016 voter turnout numbers for the local government elections in 2016, we actually saw record numbers, 58% of voter turnout. This time around, we had about 26.2 million registered voters. By 6 o'clock last night, the numbers were really quite dismal, 26% voter turnout. That was by 6 p.m. So it'll be interesting to see whether before the 9 o'clock cutoff, whether that number really increased dramatically. Will we see a much bigger push? Some people saying, and this is again going by social media, that they were in the line. They were in the line waiting to cast their ballot, and they had yet to decide how they would do so. You know, in metro municipalities, there are 2 ballots that you cast your voting in. The smaller districts, of course, 3 ballot papers that you would have been voting for. So, of course, as part of our rolling coverage here at the Results Operations Center for the IEC, we're going to be on the floor talking to political parties. We're going to try and pulling the IEC as well. We've got the board up for you there with all of the results as they continue to trickle in from the provinces. The Free State province now is up there. It's looking very, very green, but still early days. The green there, ANC numbers, it signifies. So let's bring the discussion back to our studios here at The Rock. Pieter is the CEO of the FF+. Pieter, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming onto the show so early.
Thank you so much.
How are you feeling this day after elections?
Actually very tired. The last time I saw my bed was about 28 hours ago.
Sure, yeah. At least you didn't say 28 days ago.
Luckily not.
But 28 hours, yeah. So you've had a busy day?
We did. We extremely busy being here at the results center, monitoring the results. Yesterday especially monitoring some of the complaints that we received. So we were busy, but it's a good busy, especially the day after when the results start trickling in and you realize that as a party you've done fairly well.
So let's get context for how you're expecting to do in the 2021 local government elections. How was your performance 2016?
In 2016, we managed to win only proportional representation seats.
Right.
So we never had any ward councillors or ward councillor seats. We ended up with 69 councillors. Then after the last national elections in 2019, we managed to win some wards in by-elections, specifically in the Northwest province. And we realized that if we had to continue with the growth we saw in 2019, that would mean that across the country we would be able to win some wards now. And we've already seen that for the first time in a province such as the Northern Cape. We've won a ward there now, a ward in Mpumalanga, and we believe as we get results from our party agents that there's still a few other surprises waiting on us.
What do you attribute these gains to?
I think, first of all, if we look at where the party has come from, especially the change that we saw in our leadership, with Dr. Pieter becoming our leader just prior to the 2019 election. Obviously, his leadership style is to be contributed. A person who is very, very strong on making sure that the administration is running properly and smoothly. We've seen that change within our party, moving away from your typical party structure to be more like a business-like organization. That is why the party appointed me as the CEO.
Right.
Moving away from your traditional Secretary General to a CEO. So that's one thing. But I think if we go and look at the changes that we've seen in South Africa, the politics of South Africa, I think that is one of the reasons why we've experienced the growth in 2019. People being tired of corruption and wanting something new, something fresh. I believe that in 2019 the people adhered to the message of the Freedom Front Plus. And if we look at this election, the 2021 election, what we offered voters was a specific 10-point plan where we said to our voters, if you give us the mandate, here are the 10 points that we would focus on.
Let me ask you this, because some of the analysis around political parties and your party as well is that the growth seen in the Freedom Front Plus is due to some of what might be unfolding in the Democratic Alliance, and that people who are leaning further right in the DA and are not finding a home there are moving to the FF Plus. What do you say to that?
I think to a certain extent it's the truth. People who thought that the DA would offer them something specific and they did not find that there. I think specifically if we look at sound financial principles, leadership, I think the changes that took place within the DA over the last few years might have contributed to the growth that we've experienced. But also I think there's something different that the voters found with us as the Freedom Front Plus. And that's one key thing of not changing our message through the years. Our policy has remained constant. People know where they stand with us. And we've not changed our policy. And I think being honest with voters, putting the same policy forward election after election, changing the style a little bit, but having the same policy, I think that is something that many voters believed is something that they can hold on to.
Very, very quickly, in terms of longevity for the Freedom Front Plus, does your party appeal to black voters in any way?
Yes, definitely. Specifically with this election, we saw for the first time us having number one candidates or mayoral candidates in a number of municipalities, black candidates. Slowly but surely, your more conservative black voter is finding a place within what we offer as Freedom Front Plus.
Pieter, we're going to leave it there for now. Thanks very much indeed for coming to our studios here at the Results Operations Centre. He is the CEO of the Freedom Front Plus, and of course this is what we'll be doing at the Results Operations Centre in Pretoria, Mpo. We'll be speaking to various political party leaders, we'll be speaking to IEC officials, and a little later on we're also going to give you a sense of what it takes to run this kind of operation, this Results Operations Centre in Pretoria, the catering, the security, what does it take for these results to come in and for people to do their work and do so safely. For now, it's back to you in studio.